Tank, sentinel, and damage sponge. Aren't those three ways of saying the same thing? Maybe, maybe not. Let's look into it a little deeper, shall we? So it doesn't really matter what you call it. In essence, you're still doing the same thing. You're just trying to absorb the hits so that the rest of your party doesn't have to. So why qualify them differently? As a defender, it seems to me you've got three ways of keeping your party from harm. You can A, take the hits for them, B, try to deflect them off your armor and shield, or C, try and prevent the creatures from getting to them in the first place and thus mitigating damage that way. So this is why I like to segment them and keep them in these different categories, because even though you might think you're doing one thing, chances are you might be doing two or even three of these tactics all at the same time. And I think if you want to look at it in that respect, you can get a lot more mileage out of your tank rather than just being the guy who stands in the front and gets wailed on. It's a war, it's a game, a ball and chain, chew my arm off to get away. So the quickest and dirtiest way I can define it is tank would be deflection, sentinel would be interference, and damage sponge would be absorption. And it's these delineations that determine whether or not you're passively defending or actively defending. The other benefit of breaking it down to these subcategories of defender is that if your party has a specific way of approaching combat, you can adapt your tactics to fit theirs. Not only will you be having more fun, but you'll actually be a much more effective character. So I'll try and give you some examples of what I'm talking about. Now you might find that your actual role is going to be determined quite a bit by your party dynamic and your party makeup. So what I'm getting at is, say for example you're a tank or you want to be a tank. This would actually benefit more if you have a cleric in your group who can cast Shield of Faith on you. So you're going to want the best armor you can get, you're going to want the defense fighting style, you're also going to want a shield, and you're going to try and get your dex as high as you can get it. Because every one of these things is going to affect the total armor class that you're going to receive. And in doing that, you make yourself as difficult to hit as possible. Now this might sound really obvious and really straightforward, but it's just the basics of what it is to tank. Or basically, it's the basics of what it is to be a defender. It's when you start looking at other things like sponging damage and sentinel work that then the defender starts to become a little bit more complicated, and we'll get into those now. So quite early in the game you may find that you can actually sponge damage better than you can actually tank damage, and you're probably thinking that that's an absolutely insane thing to say, considering the fact that you only have the basic starting hit points like D10 or D10 plus your constitution modifier. But if you're working in a party with, say, a bard who can cast heroism, you're going to find that you have a huge wealth of additional hit points. This is a spell that scales very, very well. You can get a lot of additional defense out of it by simply being able to be hit many more times depending on your party member's charisma modifier. The best way I can describe it is, for every +1 modifier your bard has on their charisma, you're looking at an additional 10 hit points, because the spell lasts for, I think it can last for up to a minute. I mean, another thing is, paladins, for example, make good static defenders, because they don't have as many attacks as fighters do, so they can quite happily stand there and use the dodge action rather than attacking, or use their spells. So that's something they have going for them. But it's a bit different for a fighter, because a fighter gets multiple attacks. But if you want to go with a feat like Polearm Master and go with the Battle Master class, then you can then choose to use multiple attacks. You can get a bonus attack with your bonus action, and you can get your superiority dice on top of that, which you can then use for, say, trip attacks, or for goading attacks, or, for menacing attacks. Things that will either debilitate or keep away your opponents. So sometimes more attacks are actually more beneficial in tanking damage or being a sentinel rather than actually just maxing out your armor class or maxing out your hit points. Something else that's actually really worth considering is, are you going to have any spellcasting under your belt? Normally, I would say Blade Ward is a terrible spell for a wizard because basically you're trying to defend when you can be doing so much more. But for a defender character, a damage sponge, it can actually be quite useful. If a party member has cast something like Heroism on you, you're going to get a bunch more temporary hit points. Perhaps get something along the lines of 4 or maybe 5 temporary hit points each round. But if you're then casting Blade Ward every round, then that damage that's coming in is getting halved, and it's just coming off your temporary hit points. So it isn't even the fact that you're taking any damage. If you're getting 5 temporary hit points around, and you're getting to cast Blade Ward, they're going to have to do at least 11 damage in order to get any kind of scratch on you. Blade Ward isn't a cantrip that I would recommend for any dedicated spellslinger, but for anyone playing the damage sponge, I think it is actually pretty good. So it's an easy cantrip to get a hold of. I mean, there are multiple ways of doing it. You can just simply play an elf. It's pretty good because you have a high dexterity and you get a free wizard cantrip, so obviously Blade Ward. You can take the Magic Initiate feat. It's an unusual feat that I actually see other spellcasters taking, but I don't think I don't actually think everyone quite knows how it works, because you don't need to be a spellslinger in order to use it. You need to have, the appropriate ability modifier, and that obviously affects the cantrips, but it's more like an ability than a spell, because I think some people don't understand quite how the feat works. So you get access to a spell of your choice, 1 per day, and you get access to 2 cantrips of your choice. Therefore, you're going to take Blade Ward, and it just depends on how you like to play. I mean, you could take Heroism, although the concentration can be a bit of a problem. Or you could take, say, like a quick heal, like if you wanted Healing Word. That's great because you can use it as a reaction, quick heal, as well as sponging damage each round with Blade Ward. Fantastic. The other way you can do it is if you were to take a character like a Eldritch Knight. If you're a fighter, you can go Eldritch Knight. That's a great easy way to do it. The benefit of being able to also get an attack as well as cast Blade Ward, the cantrip and attack option that the Eldritch Knight has, can actually be beneficial too. So there are ways around it. There are ways you can do it. So barbarians make ridiculously good damage sponges with their high amount of hit points. I mean, if you wanted to have tough as well, if you can afford the feat, by all means take it. Being in rage, resistance to all the common weapon attacks. If you really wanted to go crazy on your resistances, you can go Bear Totem. You can get all those energy resistances too, apart from Psychic. So, barbarians make excellent damage sponges. Fighters make great active sentinels. The more attacks they get, the more battle maneuvers they can use, the more they can trip or push back or keep opponents down. So that's a real benefit for them. They also take reach weapons are great because then obviously you're mitigating damage that way. Paladins, on the other hand, make great passive sentinels. Their aura of warding, their aura of courage, they benefit more, I think, from the protection as opposed to a fighter who would benefit more from defense. This is my opinion anyway, because obviously you're going to want more attacks as a fighter, thus, like, say, Polar Master, for example, and you're going to want more interference as a paladin, so protection all the way. Tanks, on the other hand, can actually benefit from feats like Defensive Duelist and Shield Master. Now, you probably think that Defensive Duelist works pretty much just for the finesse characters, but to be honest, it actually is pretty damn good for the plated up defender. If you consider the fact that Shield Master is going to be your anti-spell feat, with all that extra AC, Defensive Duelist is going to end up being your anti-melee. I mean, you're going to have a huge AC anyway. Chances are, if you've got a generous cleric in the party, they'll cast Shield of Faith on you. And if they manage to get past all of that, you can use a reaction to up your defense again by adding a proficiency bonus to it. So you could be near enough untouchable. It's a respectable tactic for any heavy armor wearer and shield bearer, that naturally then leads on to heavy armor master. Being able to reduce some of that damage as well, coming from weapons, is pretty damn handy. Absolutely, other classes can get involved and be a part of the tank sentinel damage sponge strategy. A druid can easily shapeshift into something that can sponge a lot of damage. You've also got warlocks with their fiend pack patron that can gain temporary hit points, as well as having other classes like Abjurer who can put up their arcane ward. So they can definitely be instrumental in a little bit of off-tanking or helping other characters to do their job better. A cleric can easily take on the tank role. They're allowed to have heavy armor, they're allowed to have shields, they can also cast spells that can up their defense, so there's no reason why they can't really stack up their AC. As far as sentinel work goes, you could have a warlock with repelling blast to keep that pushback on. You can have a battle master archery class. Using trip attack, menacing attack, you can easily help to mitigate damage through those abilities. There's even nothing saying that a Beastmaster Ranger couldn't use their animal companion to interfere with enemy attacks. So yeah, everyone can get involved. Although I wouldn't actually use all these as go-to strategies, I would use them as enhancements to an already pre-existing tank sentinel damage sponge you have in the party, if things just tend to get a little hairy. But they can absolutely work in a pinch, so definitely consider it. So for all of you guys that made it this far, thanks very much for watching. Hopefully you had as much fun viewing this video as I did making it. If you have any constructive criticism or any input that you'd like to put in the comments, by all means feel free to do so, I do read them. If you liked it, thumbs up. If you're not subscribed yet, go on, get subscribed, there's no reason not to. And hit that little notification button so that you can get more content from the channel. Also feel free to share the video around to people who you think need to try and up their game when it comes to tanking or sponging damage. See if they can benefit from it as well. Anyway, it's been a lot of fun and I will see you guys next time.